Two's Company by Raymond Wilson. The sad story of a man who did not believe in ghosts. They said the house was haunted, but he laughed at them and said, "Tut tut. I never heard such tittle-tattle. As ghosts that groan and chains that rattle. And just to prove I'm in the right, please leave me here to spend the night." They winked absurdly, tried to smother their ignorant laughter, nudged each other, and left him just as dusk was falling. With a hunchback moon and screech owls calling. Not that this troubled him one bit. In fact, he was quite glad of it, knowing it's every sane man's mission to contradict all superstition. But what's that? Outside it seemed as if chains rattled. Someone screamed. Come, it's merely nerves, he's certain. But just the same, he draws the curtain. The stroke of 12, but there's no clock. He shuts the door and turns the lock. Of course he knows that no one's there. But no harm's done by taking care. Someone's outside, the silly joker. He may as well pick up the poker. That noise again. He checks the doors, shutters the windows, makes a pause to seek the safest place to hide. The cupboard's strong. He creeps inside. Not that there's anything to fear, he tells himself. When at his ear, a voice breathes softly. "How do you do? I'm the ghost. Pray, who are you?" Dr. Raymond Wilson is a prominent author, educator, and historian. He is based in New Kensington, Pennsylvania, and has made significant contributions to the field of history through his writings and academic work. He is currently a professor of history and former chair of the Department of History at Hayes University in Kansas. Dr. Wilson has published essays, articles, or chapters in books, encyclopedias, and dictionaries, as well as many articles in professional journals. His research focuses on American history, including the Civil War era, military history, and the history of the American West. He is also known for his work on the history of race relations and the African American experience. In addition to his academic work, Dr. Wilson is a member of several professional organizations, including the American Historical Association, the Society of Military History, and the Western History Association. He has received numerous honors and awards throughout his career. In 2002, he was awarded the Fort Hays State University Pilot Award for outstanding teaching. The highlighted parts in blue color are left out in the poem given in your anthology, but in my appreciation, I am going to use all these lines. Two's Company by Raymond Wilson. The sad story of a man who did not believe in ghosts. They said the house was haunted, but he laughed at them and said, "Tut tut. I never heard such tittle-tattle. as ghosts that groan and chains that rattle. And just to prove I'm in the right, please leave me here to spend the night. They winked absurdly, tried to smother their ignorant laughter, nudged each other, and left him just as dusk was falling. With a hunchback moon and screech owls calling. Not that this troubled him one bit. In fact, he was quite glad of it, knowing it's every sane man's mission to contradict all superstition. But what's that? Outside it seemed as if chains rattled. Someone screamed. Come, it's merely nerves, he's certain. But just the same, he draws the curtain. The stroke of 12, but there's no clock. He shuts the door and turns the lock. Of course, he knows that no one's there. But no harm's done by taking care. Someone's outside, the silly joker. He may as well pick up the poker. That noise again. He checks the doors, shutters the windows, makes a pause to seek the safest place to hide. The cupboard's strong. He creeps inside. Not that there's anything to fear, he tells himself. When at his ear, a voice breathes softly. How do you do? I'm the ghost. Pray, who are you? The poem Two's Company tells the story of a man who does not believe in ghosts and challenges his friends to leave him alone in a haunted house overnight to prove it. The first 6 lines in the poem introduce the main character's attitude towards the idea of ghosts. They, in the first line, are the people who believe in ghosts in this particular town. He laughed at them and said, "Tut tut." This line indicates his dismissive tone and his arrogance and disbelief in a direct and impactful way. Tut tut is an interjection used to express mild disapproval or annoyance. This proves the main character's disbelief in the idea of ghosts. The third line, "I never heard such tittle-tattle," emphasizes the character's scorn of the idea of ghosts. As ghosts that groan and chains that rattle creates sound imagery in the reader's mind, and also this line paints a picture of human perception of ghosts. In the last 2 lines, the man requests to be left alone in the haunted house to prove his point. This proves his confidence and arrogance. It also creates a sense of foreshadowing, hinting at the character's eventual downfall. In the 7th and the 8th lines, the writer describes the reaction of the other people who were present when the man declared that he did not believe in ghosts and asked to be left alone in the haunted house. These lines clearly suggest their reaction. They winked at each other, tried to suppress their laughter, and lightly pushed each other with their elbows or shoulders to share their amusement at the man's skepticism about the haunted house. The line with the hunchback moon and screech owls calling is an example of imagery where the poet uses words and phrases to create a vivid sensory experience for the reader. The phrase hunchback moon suggests that the moon was crescent-shaped and hunched over like an old person, which creates a spooky atmosphere. The screeching of the owls adds to the eerie feeling and reinforces the idea of the setting being a haunted house. The combination of these two images gives the reader a clear sense of the time of day and the atmosphere of the place. Not that this troubled him one bit. In fact, he was quite glad of it, knowing it's every sane man's mission to contradict all superstition. Despite being left alone in a supposedly haunted house, the man is not troubled by this at all. In fact, he is quite pleased about it, as he believes it is the duty of a sane person to reject superstitions and irrational beliefs. These lines suggest that the man is confident and his skepticism and is eager to prove his point by spending the night alone in the haunted house. These lines describe the protagonist's growing unease as he starts to hear strange noises outside. The rattling of chains and a scream creates a spooky atmosphere and adds to the suspense of the poem. The line, "Come, come, it's merely nerves," is an expression that means to try to calm oneself or others by dismissing the fear of anxiety as irrational or unfounded. Here, the man is trying to convince himself that the noises he hears are just his imagination and not caused by ghosts. The stroke of 12, but there's no clock. The absence of a clock emphasizes the man's increasing fear and uncertainty as he experiences strange and eerie occurrences in the house. He shuts the door and turns the lock. The man who initially did not believe in ghosts starts to feel scared and takes precautions to protect himself. He shuts the door and turns the lock even though he knows that no one is there. However, he still hears strange noises and his fear grows. When he hears someone outside, he thinks it's a silly joker. He tries to dismiss the possibility of a real ghost, attributing the sounds to a prankster or someone playing a joke on him. The man who previously ridiculed the idea of ghosts is now frightened by the strange sounds he hears. He checks the doors and windows to ensure they are locked and seeks the refuge in the cupboard, which he believes is the safest place to hide. Throughout the second stanza, the writer portrays how fear can make a person behave irrationally, and the man's actions show that he is becoming increasingly anxious and paranoid. The use of exclamation marks and parentheses create a sense of urgency and panic, emphasizing the man's growing fear. Finally, the man inside the cupboard is confronted by a real ghost. The phrase, "Pray, who are you?" is an old-fashioned way of asking someone to introduce himself or herself. It is a polite and formal way of asking someone's name. The use of dialogue in the ghost's introduction adds a sense of direct and personal interaction between the man and the ghost. The sudden appearance of the ghost creates a sense of fear and surprise, which reinforces the idea that even the most skeptical people can be proven wrong in the face of supernatural. What are the themes discussed in the poem Two's Company by Raymond? Belief and skepticism is one of the major themes discussed here. The main character's disbelief in ghosts and the supernatural is challenged throughout the poem. Superstition and tradition is another theme. The poem explores the tension between modern rationality and traditional beliefs in ghosts and the supernatural. The non-believer in the poem represents modern rationality, whereas the believers in the town represent traditional beliefs in ghosts. Overconfidence leading to one's downfall is another theme that can be derived from the poem Two's Company. The main character in the poem is overconfident and does not believe in ghosts, despite warnings from others. He insists on spending the night in a supposedly haunted house to prove his point. But as the night progresses, he becomes more and more scared and eventually encounters a ghost. His overconfidence and disbelief in the supernatural ultimately lead to his fear and terror, highlighting the theme that overconfidence can lead to one's downfall. What are the techniques employed by the writer in the poem Two's Company? The poem has a consistent rhyme scheme which helps to create a sense of rhythm and continuity. In the first stanza, we can find a regular rhyme scheme of AA, BB, CC, DD, EE, FF, and GG. The poem uses irony to create humor and to comment on the main character's misguided beliefs. The fact that the man who does not believe in ghosts ends up encountering one is a classic example of irony. The poem personifies the ghost, giving it human-like qualities such as the ability to speak and questions. What are the symbols used in the poem? The ghost can be seen as a symbol of the man's own fears and insecurities that he has been denying throughout the poem. Even the hunchback moon may also be seen as a symbol of the unnatural or supernatural forces that are at play in the story. The use of parentheses creates a sense of urgency and panic throughout the poem. Dramatic narration is another technique used in the poem. The poem is told in the third-person point of view, and the narrator sets the scene, describes the actions of the characters, and provides insight into their thoughts and emotions. This technique creates a dramatic effect and engages the reader in the story. The writer has used onomatopoeia in the poem. The phrases like ghosts that groan, chains that rattle, screech owls calling are examples for onomatopoeic words and phrases used in the poem. Imagery is another technique employed by the writer. The poet uses vivid and descriptive language to create images in the reader's mind. For example, a hunchback moon and screech owls calling creates an image of a spooky and eerie night, and as if chains rattled, someone screamed, creates a vivid image of a haunted house. Suspense is another technique used by the writer. The poem builds up a sense of tension and anticipation as the protagonist dismisses the idea of ghosts and decides to spend the night in the supposedly haunted house. As the night progresses, the eerie atmosphere and strange occurrences such as chains rattling and someone screaming create a feeling of suspense leading up to the final reveal of the ghostly voice speaking to the protagonist. This technique of suspense is used to engage the reader and create a sense of unease or excitement. Throughout the poem, the writer has used sound devices like alliteration, assonance, and consonance. I hope that you would be able to figure out examples for each and every sound device by yourself.